I stood in the blinding white silence of the Denali winter, and it was then that I realized my husband had not only cheated on me, but had stolen the very foundations of my life. The scent of betrayal was neither cheap perfume nor wine. It was like the frozen smoke of a cold, calculated explosion. My name is Kiska. I am 29 years old, and for 7 years, my life has been the Aurora Hearth Lodge, the legacy my grandmother built in this wild corner of Alaska. Logan was my warmth against this cold, not just my husband, but also my business partner, my confidant, and the only person I trusted for my future. 2 months ago, he insisted on purchasing special, very expensive equipment for the lodge's satellite system. His reasoning was to provide our guests with flawless Wi-Fi even during winter storms. But the real shocker was this. That special satellite equipment wasn't for better internet. It was a carefully placed listening device, recording every private conversation in our home, every whisper I shared, every financial worry. And when I found that recording, I heard him tell his mistress, "The storm is coming, and Kiska has no idea her whole life is about to freeze over." Before we dive into this tough story, if you value real-life stories and authenticity, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. In the comments, mention which city you're listening to my stories from. Your support gives us the power to create new stories. I will never forget that moment. The temperature was 20 degrees Fahrenheit, but when I knelt down, I felt a warmth spreading through my body. However, this was not the warmth of shock, but rather the cold emanating from a deep professional anger. Logan's plan seemed flawless. Unlike me, who was deeply connected to the Alaskan land and local community, Logan was seen as an outsider. We had built the lodge through my grandmother's hard work. It offered a luxurious wilderness experience and brought in thousands of dollars each year. My expertise lay in supply chains, managing the local guide team, and logistics. Logan handled the public relations side of the money, which I now realize meant slowly tarnishing my reputation. Every hiccup I'd experienced over the past 6 months, every moment of doubt, came flooding back to me. Just as Vesper realized how Cassius isolated and diminished her, Logan had diminished me in the same way. Isolation. He alienated me from my old college friends by telling them they were too city-oriented and couldn't adapt to Alaska life. Questioning authority. At management meetings, he constantly opposed my suggestions by calling them too emotional or too risky. Financial pressure. When I asked about the lodge's finances, he pushed me aside, saying, "Don't worry about the money, Kiska. Leave that to me. You focus on the outside operations." In reality, he had created a woman who needed his permission. The once determined, independent woman had become someone who apologized just for existing. The recording was a conversation between Logan and a woman 2 days ago. The woman's name was Taya, the person Logan had hired as his new marketing director. Taya's voice resembled Candace's overly sweet, indulgent tone when she spoke to Marcus. "What's that old, stupid woman going to do?" Taya giggled. "Swallow everything?" Logan's voice came through the speaker, arrogant and clear. "Aurora Hearth will be my masterpiece. Kiska is just a pure fool, clinging to the legacy of an old tribe. I'm slowly sidelining her. I've cut her ties with the local people. No one but me knows the financial decisions. New contracts will be ready in a week. I'll sell the lodge to a corporate giant, North Star Holdings, and have them transfer the shares to me. Then Kiska will never return to these rotten mountains again." This wasn't just deception. It was the murder of art and spirit. Just as Vivian Sterling's life's work had been turned into an industrial cleaner, Logan was destroying my grandmother's legacy, the pure reputation of this region, for a dirty corporate sale. The final words on the recording revealed just how far the plan had gone. Taya said, "So is she going to sign it so easily? She's not as smart as you, but we still need to be careful." Logan chuckled sarcastically. "She's already half crazy. I've been telling her for the past 6 months that the lodge's bookings and finances are deteriorating. I'm giving her high-altitude vitamin supplements that give her some confusion and a mild sedative. She's already stressed, and she'll soon be leaving under the pretext of mental health issues. She'll sign everything at the board meeting on Friday. Then we're off to Miami, darling, ending this cold adventure in Alaska." The phone slipped from my hand and hit the wooden floor. Just like Vivian's signature at the board meeting, Logan wanted a moment of exposure, to portray my downfall as a moment of weakness and madness. But I didn't fall. I knelt down, breathing in the icy air. My tears dried instantly, the pain transformed into a diamond-clear resolve. I was returning home as a general, like one preparing for a decisive battle. I immediately rose to my feet. My movements were sharp, as if cold steel had been injected into my body instead of adrenaline. I returned to the lodge. Logan had left early that morning, under the pretext of meeting with investors downtown. I had 4 hours. First, there was the sedative matter. I found the bottle of high-altitude vitamins Logan had brought me. Just as Vivian had examined the supplements Candace and Marcus had brought, I peeled off the label with my fingernail. Underneath, not the logo of a fake brand, but the corporate emblem of North Star Holdings. This was a conspiracy, not just a deception, but a corporate operation. I immediately went to my lab. No, the small purification room I used in the lodge, where I tested snowmelt and the purity of water. I analyzed a small amount of the sedative. It was a low-dose substance, but one that, when taken continuously, severely slowed cognitive function. Thankfully, it was expelled from the body within 48 hours. But the real battle was the financial heart of the lodge, its sustainability fund. My grandmother's will contained a clause that made selling the lodge difficult. 51% of the lodge's shares can only be transferred to a family member who values the sustainability of the inheritance and its ties to the local community. Logan had ignored this clause, but he thought he could easily find a new buyer by leveraging the lodge's 70-year reputation. The lodge's safe was kept in my grandmother's old log house. Logan knew the combination, but I retrieved the key from where my grandmother had hidden it for me, inside her favorite Inupiq carved figurine. When I opened the safe, I found the documents Logan had prepared to transfer all of the lodge's cash reserves and our client's large deposits to an offshore account. And at that moment, a brilliant, icy idea came to me. Curiosity gap. Logan was selling the lodge's reputation. I would leave him with an empty shell. However, fighting in Alaska wasn't like fighting in a restaurant in Atlanta. This place was spacious and quiet. Silence could be a weapon. Kiska's plan, empty shell. I immediately called my local lawyer, Sarah. Sarah was my most important ally in proving that I wasn't an old woman, that I was legally fully competent. "Sarah," I said, my voice firm and cold, even on the phone, "we're not selling the lodge. We're vacating it." A winter storm was rapidly approaching. Weather reports said that starting Thursday night, the region would be hit by a major snowstorm that would last at least 72 hours. Logan was expecting investors for Friday's board meeting. My plan was simple, but it risked everything. 1. Securing the evidence. Just like Vivian's stained silk shawl and video recording, I pieced together Logan's voice recordings, screenshots of his text messages with Taya, and North Star Holdings' sedative vitamin boxes. All of this was locked away in my meat freezer at 20 degrees, the safest place in the lodge. 2. Evacuating the heart of the lodge. The true value of the lodge wasn't just in the buildings on paper. It lay in long-term agreements with international tour operators, local hunting permits, and most importantly, my grandmother's collection of rare handicrafts that she had amassed over decades. This collection was the reputation and culture that the corporate buyers Logan planned to sell to truly desired. 3. Visualizing betrayal. Logan was forcing me into a public meeting to prove my weakness and madness, and I was to leave him with nothing but a ghost. I called my Uncle James, the lodge's old trusted guide. James had never liked Logan and knew how greedy he was. "James," I said, "a great storm is coming Friday. We need to evacuate everything from the lodge. You and your team will move the collection to safety on Thursday night, before the storm begins." James's voice was hoarse, filled with determination. "Whatever Logan's plan, Kiska, we will not let him defile this legacy." On Thursday afternoon, as the wind began to howl outside, 2 executives from North Star Holdings arrived at the lodge's entrance, just as Logan had expected. This board meeting was like a planned wedding, a performance. Logan, like Marcus, who was trying to cast me in the role of an old, sickly perfumer, expected me to play my role as a stressed, emotional lodge owner. I opened the door. I was wearing the most formal, yet Alaskan-specific, dark blue tweed dress. My hair was pulled back tightly, my face covered by a mask of cold calmness. When Logan entered with the guests, he was momentarily taken aback. As he expected, he hadn't seen a woman as distressed, sleepless, and trembling as he had imagined. "Kiska, my love," he said, his voice filled with Candace's false sweetness. "Why do you look so tense? You need to rest." I smiled. This wasn't the end of a true love story. This was the emergency exit I didn't know I needed. "Don't worry, darling," I said, my voice sweeter than honey, but firmer than iron. "You worry about me too much, but I won't be resting tonight. I'll be working all night." I saw a momentary panic in Logan's eyes. "Work? In what ways?" Maintaining her role in front of the guests, she said, "Of course, darling. You're doing your best for the lodge." I smiled inwardly. While Logan waited for the lodge to be sold, I had already finished the real work. That night, James and his crew loaded the last boxes. From the outside, the lodge looked normal. The lights were on. A faint scent emanated from the kitchen. But inside, the collection, the whole soul, was gone. Things were starting to improve when a problem arose. At 4 a.m, a message arrived from James. A man who was friends with Logan's local sheriff was patrolling the North Gate. They had a suspicion. Logan hadn't just planned to sell the lodge and run away. He was also planning to have me thrown in jail for violating his grandmother's will. Secretly removing the lodge's main assets, the collection, could be legally considered an act of harming the lodge, especially since the lodge was about to be transferred to a buyer. I immediately instructed James over the phone. "Send me the address of the hideout where he keeps the collection." Logan expected to see me at the breakfast table, as usual, tired and pale, but I sat down in a dark velvet suit, an authoritative color that concealed any tension. "Good night, darling," I said, placing a piece of burnt bread on his plate. "Today is the big day. The investors are ready. Please review those contracts one more time before signing them. Let's not miss any details. A glint of triumph instantly appeared on Logan's face. It was a triumphant one, and he immediately hid it behind a mask of compassion. Of course, Kiska, I'll make sure everything is perfect for you. After breakfast, we went to the meeting room. Just before the meeting started, there was one last thing I needed to do. I went to the sink and pulled out a bottle of Alaska Natural Purifier, a strong, pine-scented disinfectant that the lodge kept in the guest bathrooms. I took another bottle with me. Just like Vivian had done, I prepared 2 identical, heavy crystal pitchers. In one, I filled with regular water to serve to the guests. In the other, I poured that strong, pungent, chemical-smelling disinfectant. I crushed some of the pills Logan used as a sedative and added them to it. I placed both pitchers on the table in Loca's meeting room. Logan and the investors, Mr. Thorne, CEO of North Star Holdings, Wallace King's counterpart in northern Alaska, entered. Thorne addressed Logan at the table. Logan, we've heard your wife has been a little emotional lately. I hope she won't have any trouble signing the deal. Logan responded, gesturing towards the contracts on the table. Don't worry, Thorne. Kiska understands the seriousness of the situation. She's just tired. Thorne looked at me, a calculation in his eyes. And at that very moment, I decided to follow a tradition. A gentleman, I said, my voice as clear as crystal. Before you sign, there's an old tradition of my grandmother's, the native earth test. Thorne frowned. What test? There's nothing like that in our contracts. It's not a rule. It's a tradition, I replied. Those who buy our lodge need to understand its spirit. Please, smell one of the essences in these pitchers and tell me what it smells like. Don't lie, because an Alaskan's nose picks up lies from miles away. Logan stared at me in horror, his face deathly pale. He thought my sense of smell had been lost because of the sedatives. I picked up the first pitcher, the one with the disinfectant mixture. I poured it into 3 small glasses. Logan and Thorne reluctantly brought the glasses to their noses. Logan's face tensed. He felt nothing, or he was lying. The drug had affected him too. Logan said hesitantly. I think it's pine and a little rose. Thorne, however, said, pheromones. It smells like a strong chemical solvent. More honest than Logan, but still not quite sure what he was smelling. I smiled, this time a cold, triumphant smile. Logan, I said, that you're smelling is the industrial disinfectant we use in the lodge's bathrooms. And Thorne, that you're smelling is the scent of the lodge's new owner. Treachery. Logan jumped up, knocking over his chair. You're crazy! Security! Sit down. My command echoed through the room like a whip. I picked up the second pitcher, the one with plain water. Here, then, is the spirit that the lodge once was. Now, let's get to the point, I said, turning to Thorne. You're buying the lodge for its corporate value, as you see in the contracts on this table. But 3 nights ago, James and his crew moved the lodge's entire artistic and historical collection to a storm shelter. Logan's face turned ashen. What? That's impossible! Security! Security? I sneered. Security works for me, Logan. And all that's left in the lodge's shelter right now is an empty shell, the one you're trying to sell you. You can use the lodge's name, but its spirit and assets won't be yours. This is fraud, Thorne roared, rising to his feet. Logan turned to me, his eyes filled with animal fear. How could you do this to us? This means millions. My reply was firm and decisive. I, Logan, saved my name, not millions, and now it's your turn to save your name. I pulled a small voice recorder from my pocket, containing a short copy of the recording Logan had sent to Taya. I pressed the button. Logan's voice echoed in the room. Kiska is just a naive fool clinging to the legacy of an old tribe. I'm slowly eliminating her. Logan staggered against the wall. His eyes widened in horror. This is a fake, a lie. No, Logan, I said. This is your reality, and there's another witness to this reality. And just then, the meeting room door opened, and a familiar detective from the Anchorage Police Department entered with James's son. Logan jumped up, knocking over his chair. You're crazy! Security! But those who entered through the door of the conference room, my sanctuary, were not the lodge's guards Logan was expecting, but Detective Hayes from the Anchorage Police Department, whom I'd known for years, and James's son, the lodge's former security chief. Without even glancing at me, Detective Hayes turned to Logan, who stood frozen in the middle of the room. Logan Sterling? Logan was completely stiff. His face was filled with the nakedness of an actor who had dropped his mask in a moment of crisis. How dare you? We need to question you about the source of the chemicals you used against your wife. Hayes's voice echoed with the coldness of legal procedure. Logan looked at me, a mixture of hatred and childish rage in his eyes. You called the police on your own son. I didn't avert my gaze. My voice was colder than the water that had just been spilled on the table. I don't have a son. I had a son, but he died the moment he decided to pour poison into his mother's glass. You are just a stranger trying to steal my life. Logan turned to Mr. Thorne, CEO of North Star Holdings, in desperation. Thorne, help! This is a conspiracy. He's crazy. Thorne, just like Wallace King, slumped back in his chair, the corporate confidence vanishing from his face. His gaze towards Logan was pure profit and loss. This was a failed deal, and Logan had now become a liability. We have nothing to do with this, Thorne said, regaining his composure. These are your family matters. We didn't know he was using these substances in this way. The deal is canceled. Logan lunged at Thorne. You can't go! You promised me money! But Thorne signaled to his guards, and they headed toward the door. Just then, Detective Hayes signaled a second officer to intercept Thorne. Mr. Thorne, you will come with us. We have questions about the source of the chemicals found on the suspect. Logan was handcuffed. The sound was dry and short, like a gunshot. It was like the final chord of the symphony I had been writing for the past 3 days. What was truly shocking was this. Even as Logan was being handcuffed, he thought that the lodge and my reputation were completely destroyed. In his eyes, I was still a crazy old woman, but I knew that with the evidence I had, this manipulation of his was a bomb that would sink his corporate partners as well. B. The revelation of the poison and silent victory. Hayes's men led Logan out of the room. Hysterical screams echoed down the hallway as Thorne and the other North Star executives stood around the table like beaten dogs cornered. They had come to watch the collapse of my corporate empire, but it was the empire of their own lies that had crumbled. This is a misunderstanding, Thorne began, his voice hoarse, his usual deep and commanding tone now gone. Kiska, we really didn't know the extent of it. Your son presented us with a completely different picture. I stared at him, my eyes wide open. A different picture? Preston, my trusted raw material supplier, stepped forward from beside Detective Hayes. He held not a contract file, but a simple cardboard lab folder. Honest buyers don't supply neurotoxins to private individuals, Mr. Thorne, Preston said, serious. Preston tossed the papers in front of Thorne. They scattered on the glossy surface. What are these? Thorne recoiled. These are the chromatography results, I replied, pointing to the documents. Samples taken from the cream on the cake Logan brought me, and from the wine he gave me at the restaurant. Those chemists figured it out. These samples contained your patented receptor blocker, Series S45, a substance not available for public sale and used only in your in-house laboratories to test for environmental aggression. Thorne's face turned ashen. This is a coincidence, a stolen batch. Don't bother, I interrupted. Logan's belongings have inventory numbers for the light bulbs, and the investigation will quickly determine exactly who signed off on removing those samples from the warehouse. I walked to the window. Below, the red and blue lights of patrol cars flashed. Looking out at the city, I addressed them. You didn't just try to buy my company cheaply. You've armed my son against me. You've given him the means to turn me into a defenseless vegetable. This isn't business, gentlemen. This is complicity in a grave crime. Thorne slumped into his chair, his head in his hands. This wasn't the end of the deal. This was the end of North Star Holdings. A scandal of this magnitude would wipe out their shares overnight. At this point, I want to ask you, my valued listeners, CTA integration. I, like Vivian Sterling, have handed over all the evidence I have to the police to save the lodge's spirit and reputation. Logan going to jail will completely ruin his life. If you were in Kiska's place, would you push someone closest to you to face such a grave punishment in order to save your own life and protect your legacy? Don't forget to share your honest opinion in the comments. I watched Thorne and his companions being led out the door. They were all silent, heads bowed, trying not to look at me. As Thorne passed by, he let out a guttural sound, as if wanting to vent his hatred. He was going to sell you out anyway. If not to us, then to someone else. He hated your perfumes. He said they smelled of mothballs and death. I replied calmly, he was wrong. They smell of eternity. And now, Mr. Thorne, your career smells of death. See, retrieving the narrative and the great escape plan. The door closed. Only Preston, Detective Hayes, and I remained in the room. I had saved the lodge. I had saved my name. But the price was high. My 7-year marriage and my future were shattered. How do you feel? Preston asked. Like being skinned alive, Preston, I replied honestly. But you were right. I saved your soul, and the skin will grow back. Hayes stared at me in astonishment. Kiska, your son was just arrested. Perhaps you should rest a little, retreat into solitude. I immediately remembered that ancient song Logan and Candace used to sing to me. Rest, you're getting old. Go, leave your life to us. No, I said, adjusting the cuffs of my velvet jacket. Rest is for those who have finished their journey. And it seems I'm just beginning. I returned to the lodge. The lodge was a shell with its soul emptied, but it wasn't for sale. After a week of chaos, as Logan had planned, he tried to make a public statement, just as Cassius had done. On Monday morning, a headline exploded across all Alaskan local media. Aurora Hearth owner Kiska Sterling cancels engagement due to cognitive regression. Reports husband Logan Sterling to police for mental health issues. Logar was even trying to control the narrative from prison. He was portraying me as an unstable, hysterical, and controlling woman. Like Vesper's escape from Cassius's clutches, Logan wanted a video of my fall, so his story would be believable. But I refused to fall. I immediately called my best friend, Adara, my former college roommate. Adara, 3 weeks after the lodge reopens, we're having a big party in the lodge's reception hall. Adara laughed in disbelief. A party? Your husband is in jail, and you've moved all the lodge's assets to a secret bunker. What kind of party is this? "This is going to be my great escape party," I said. "This isn't a bad thing that happened to me. I'm going to celebrate something good that happened to me. I'm reclaiming the narrative." Like Vesper, I was going to turn the deposit paid for the wedding hall into a celebration of freedom in the lodge's reception area. Logan had invited his friends to witness the moment I was betrayed. I, too, was going to invite the same people who were waiting for me to fall to witness my triumph. I immediately drafted the invitation. Join Kiska to celebrate a new beginning. We celebrate the closing of one door and the opening of another. I wasn't mentioning Logan or the betrayal. Logan, just like Cassius, had forgotten to block my access to our shared digital files because of his arrogance. I found the draft messages he had prepared for me, portraying me as emotional and clingy. This was proof of his months-long plan. And right at that moment, I received a message from Nanook, a young girl who was the former cook of the Curiosity Gap Lodge and the niece of the local tribal leader. Nanook, while checking Loka's kitchen stock, found the satellite recorder Logan had mentioned when talking to Taya behind the freezer. The device contained hundreds of hours of recorded conversations, and this was proof that Logan had been listening to and manipulating not just me, but all of Loka's employees. Logan wanted to destroy not only me, but my reputation as well. But I, with the evidence I had, would write the end of this story as clean as the snow of Alaska. When Detective Hayes led Logan and the stunned North Star Holdings CEO Thorne out of the room, only I and my loyal supplier Preston remained in Loka's conference room. The atmosphere of the room was a mixture of the sharp, burning smell of chemical poison and the icy Alaskan air. As the police dragged him out the door, Thorne turned to me with one last growl. "Logan would sell you everything. If not to us, then to someone else. He hated your perfumes. He said they smelled of moths and death." I kept my composure. This wasn't just slander. It was the culmination of Logan's long-standing manipulation. Like Vivian, my response was decisive. He was wrong. They reek of eternity. And now, Mr. Thorne, your career reeks of death. When the door closed, Hayes returned. His astonishment was evident on his face. "Kiska, your son was just arrested. Perhaps you should rest a little, retire." That ancient song Logan and Candace had sung to me echoed in my mind. "Rest, you're getting old. Go, leave your life to us." I straightened my shoulders. "No," I said, adjusting the cuffs of my velvet jacket. "Rest is for those who have finished their journey, and it seems I'm just beginning," Hayes continued in a professional tone. "We found the bottle of high-altitude vitamins that came with Logan's belongings and was allegedly given to you. Preliminary examination indicates it contains a low-dose sedative that blocks nerve endings. This is not just a scam to get him to sell Loka, but an attempt to inflict serious bodily harm." Preston placed the lab folder he was holding on the table. "Honest buyers don't supply neurotoxins to private individuals, as I told Mr. Thorne. These papers are the initial test results Kiska conducted in Loka's purification room. The substance Logan used as a sedative is a derivative of North Star Holdings' patented receptor blocker. It was a substance not offered for public sale and was only used for testing purposes in the company's in-house labs. This showed that the events were not just a personal betrayal. Logan had colluded with this corporate giant, the equivalent of Synergy Chem, to knowingly sideline me. After Detective Hayes and Preston left, I went down to the heart of the lodge, the kitchen. Nanook, the lodge's young and intelligent cook, was waiting for me. She held a small, gray, military-grade recording device. "Kiska," she whispered, her voice trembling with nervousness. I found this hidden behind the box Logan set up for you for the satellite signal. I disconnected it, but the recordings inside, these aren't just conversations. They've listened to the soul of the lodge. I took the device. Nanook was right. Logan's secret conversation with Taya was just a fragment. The device contained hundreds of hours of recordings from every corner of the lodge, spanning the past 6 months. I immediately connected it to an old laptop. Just like Vivian had watched the video with Sierra, I began listening to the recordings. Logan wasn't just amusing my cognitive decline. He was openly degrading my grandmother's legacy. In one recording, he was showing Taya the lodge's old, handcrafted furniture and native tribal artwork. Taya laughed. "Do you think these would fetch any money at an auction? Mothballs smelling antique junk." But what was truly shocking was that these recordings captured not only me, but also the lodge's most sensitive operations. Logan was revealing to Taya the lodge's most valuable asset, secret deals with international tour operators. This wasn't just about selling the lodge. It was about destroying its future competitiveness. In another recording, Logan was talking to Thorne, the CEO of North Star Holdings. "That old woman," my grandmother, stipulated that we allocate the lodge's profits to local tribal arts and environmental funds. That's a disgusting restriction. When you sign the contract, we'll transfer all of the lodge's funds to our corporate headquarters. Those tribes won't see a penny this winter. My stomach churned. Logan wasn't just stealing from me. He was also destroying the philosophy my grandmother bequeathed to him. Supporting the local community. He was like Marcus, who wanted to turn Sterling Sense's precious oils into industrial cleaner. Logan wanted to rip out the soul of Loka. I immediately went back to the shared digital files, where Logan had forgotten to block me. I found the brand renewal folder. I opened the drafts inside. Instead of my grandmother's symbol, the elegant, curved mountain silhouette, there was a cheap, crude logo in neon blue and orange. Title: Arctic Fresh Air, Clean Solution from North Star. My 7 years of life, Loka's 70-year legacy, would be associated with bleach and sewage to pay off gambling debts and establish a fast-paced life in Miami. All the maternal tenderness inside me turned irrevocably into icy rage. Reclaiming the narrative and invitations to freedom. Logan had been arrested, but like Cassius, he was trying to control the narrative even from prison. Local newspapers and social media were filled with his tragic story. Successful businessmen arrested on false accusations from wife with cognitive regression. Logan's arrogant voice echoed in my mind. Kiska is a naive fool. I'll prove to everyone she's gone mad. Like Vesper's reaction, I refused to cry and hide under my blanket as he wanted. He wanted a video of my downfall. I was going to give them a live stream of my triumph. I immediately turned to Adara. "The party plan is finalized," I said. "Send the party invitations to everyone Logan plans to invite to the wedding, especially that disgusting Taya, Thorne's junior partners, and the shareholders who are worried about Loka's finances." This wasn't a revenge party. This was an act of reclaiming the narrative and celebrating my freedom, just as Vesper had done. I kept the invitation simple. Kiska invites you to raise a glass to celebrate a new chapter in her life. We celebrate the closing of one door and the opening of another. Logan, like Cassius, had assumed I would fall apart and sink into silence. But my silence was a weapon as powerful as a bomb. Logan's entire plan was based on proving I was unstable. The party would show that I wasn't unstable, but rather a woman who had taken control. I canceled the deposit paid for the ballroom at the ultra-luxurious hotel Logan had chosen for the wedding, and redecorated Loca's largest winter view reception hall. I brought back the harsh, authentic colors of Alaska, which I had softened over the years to suit Logan's taste, with bold, rich purples and deep reds. And right at that moment, while planning the logistical details of the party, I found another list in Logan's shared files called Priority Notices. This list, like Cash's, contained the names of the people Logan trusted most and wanted to testify against me. And next to each name was a note: confirm Kiska's instability. This was the final proof that Logan planned not just to leave me, but to permanently destroy my reputation. His goal was to trap me in the role of the crazy ex-wife, just as Vesper was labeled by Cash's as clingy and controlling. G. Kiska's laboratory. Distilling the truth. A week before the party, the first messages from Logan began to arrive. Just like the ones Vesper received, there was first surprise, then anger. This silence is childish. You should call me. I heard you're planning a party. What are you trying to do? Humiliate me? If you dare lie about me, remember that I have a version of you too. I can pull out your mental health reports. I didn't respond to any of them. Silence had become my greatest strength. I channeled my energy into the laboratory. Like Vivian Sterling, I would transform my pain into art. All those filthy perfumes, chemical waste that Logan planned to defile by selling the lodge, I would prepare an answer to them. From the lodge's safe, I pulled out a small bottle of rare, aged essential oils that my grandmother had saved for me. It was an essence she called Polar Winter, a blend of cedarwood, mint, and rare Arctic moss. It represented my grandmother's unbreakable spirit. I took this essence and combined it with the remnants of the sedative Logan had given me, the boxes bearing the North Star Holdings corporate logo and the heavy, sticky scent of Taya's perfume. My new blend was called Clarity. I added a clear liquid to the mixture, the color of the moonlight hitting the snow-covered windows of the lodge. It was the scent of the painful but necessary truth found amidst the lies. Just like Vivian did, I used agarwood roots as the base note, roots that had taken root and kept the tree standing even in a storm. At that moment, Nanook entered the lab. She had witnessed Logan's manipulations and had stayed at the lodge to help me. Nanook, I said, shrugging at her. Logan's lawyers have filed an appeal. They say that my taking the collection, Loca's soul, is damage to commercial assets. They are also demanding that the entire lodge be sold. In Nanook's eyes, I saw the deep respect she had for the lodge. Like Vivian's young apprentice Sierra, Nanook was not just an employee, but the conscience of the lodge. Kiska, Nanook whispered, when this story is over, what will you do? The lodge needs a family heir. Logan? Logan is a stranger with a bloodline, but no soul, I interrupted. At that moment, Nanook glanced at the bottle of Clarity on the table. You know, after Vivian Sterling saved her company, she took an honest waitress as an apprentice instead of her own son. Because bloodline was just a biological fluid, sometimes it could be rotten. Legacy lived in the soul. I looked at Nanook. Was this going to be my new apprentice? Nanook, who possessed the honesty and local loyalty that Logan had rejected? Things were starting to improve when I received a call from my lawyer at the Anticipation Building. Kiska, Logan's lawyer, sent a legal threat. If anything defamatory is said at the party, they will immediately apply to the court to freeze all of Loca's assets. They are advising you to cancel the party. Logan is planning his next move to see your downfall. Logan, just like Cash's, wanted to silence me. But I touched the bottle of Clarity on my table. No cancellations, Sarah, I said. I'm not going to put on the kind of drama Logan wants. I'm just going to present the truth. H. Preparing for the final scene. The party was the third Saturday night. The reception hall of the lodge was filled with a strange mix of local tradesmen and foreign investors. As Logan expected, I wasn't playing the role of the ruined fiancé. I wore a dark burgundy velvet dress that represented authority and power. There was no trace of grief or revenge on my face, only serenity and clarity. In the middle of the party, one of Logan's associates, Richard, Taya's lover, came up to me. He approached me just as Cash's friends had done to Vesper. "Kiska," he said, his voice filled with feigned concern. "Isn't it a little emotional to be so hard on Logan? We all know how sensitive you are. I heard you planned to release his mental health reports the day after the party." Logan was making one last move to put me in a difficult position. If Logan was insane, the sale of the lodge was invalid. But if I was having an emotional crisis, he could invalidate my signature. All those legal eviction papers that saved the lodge. I smiled. "You think I'm emotional?" I asked. "Tonight I'm going to show you not just my emotions, but the truth." I pulled a small voice recorder from my pocket, containing the first few seconds of Logan's recording with Taya. I pressed the button. Logan's voice was audible amidst the surrounding chatter. "A storm is coming, and Kiska doesn't even know that her whole life is about to freeze." Richard's face turned pale. He hadn't thought I had such concrete evidence. This is manipulation," he whispered. "When the party's over," I said, keeping my voice low, but emphasizing every word, "you'll see the truth about me, unlike the clingy, controlling, and unstable woman Logan told you about. And part of that truth is that Logan sees you as just as stupid as I am." That was the first small blow that shattered his story. I walked toward the high-ceilinged hall of the lodge. I stepped onto a small platform I'd prepared. Everyone's eyes were on me. "My friends, my guests," I began, my voice strong enough to cut through the murmur of the crowd. "Tonight we are here to celebrate a breakup. But this is not the end of a love story. This is the emergency exit I didn't know I needed." I raised my glass. "To health and clarity." The crowd applauded, and glasses were raised. Logan's plan was to have me collapse in public. But I stood there, a woman who refused to collapse. Anticipation building. The party was progressing, joy and astonishment on everyone's faces. But when the ballroom door opened, a guest I was expecting entered. Kevin, the investor, Mr. Thorne's young nephew and Logan's closest friend, walked in. He was the key witness Logan had specifically invited to humiliate me, the one I wanted to see at this party. Kevin stood in the middle of the box, his eyes searching for me. His face held a complex expression, gossip curiosity, and the obligation to fulfill his duty. This was the final leg of Logan's plan. If Kevin didn't see my miserable state, Logan's story would completely collapse. But the real question was, when Kevin left the party, would he say Logan's narrative or my clarity had triumphed? The ballroom's reception area was filled with purple and gold lights. It was no longer a wedding hall, but my great escape party. Guests mingled, a mixture of gossip and genuine merriment. Everyone's eyes were searching for me. They were comparing the emotional and clingy woman Logan had described to the calm woman in the elegant burgundy velvet suit, raising her glass. Kevin was a key witness in Logan's plan. Logan wanted him to witness my madness and spread the story to everyone around them. Kevin was Logan's last hope that night. Kevin approached me with a glass of whiskey in his hand. His face held the formality of his mission and the allure of gossip. Kiska, how are you? Logan said that throwing this party was a kind of moment of crisis for you. I understand you're going through a tough time. I smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy, but one born of the leverage I held. Logan said a lot about me, didn't he, Kevin? Kevin flinched. He said I was too mentally unstable to run the lodge, that I was an emotional wreck. Did you hear he planned to release my mental health reports? Kevin nodded nervously. Things were starting to get better, I continued. Logan created a narrative about me and wanted people he trusted, like you, to endorse it. I pulled a small phone from my pocket, its screen displaying screenshots of Logan's messages to Taya. Like the texts Cassius sent to Zuri, these were concrete facts I had. Look, Kevin, I said, handing him the phone. Unlike the woman Logan described to you about me, I'm here, standing tall, clear, and free. What Logan wanted was a video of me falling apart, but I refused to give him that content. Kevin's expression changed as he looked at his phone screen. This isn't a slander. This is a plan that's been going on for months. Exactly, I said. And you know, this plan is not just a personal betrayal, but a corporate one. Logan violated my grandmother's will to protect Loca's spirit. He sold not only me, but Loca's and the local people's inheritance as well. And at that moment, Kevin's gaze shifted to the door. A momentary panic flashed in his eyes. Logan's mistress, Taya, entered. Just like Cassius's lover Sienna, Taya had probably come, on Logan's instructions, to survey the scene and document my downfall. Taya, like the heroine of Logan's story, was dressed in her best clothes. But the scene she saw when she entered wasn't the crazy ex-wife's hysterical party she had expected. There was Kiska, full of authority, cheerful, and self-assured. Taya walked straight towards me, a mask of false compassion on her face. Kiska, are you all right? I'm really sorry. I didn't know Logan was overwhelming you so much. I didn't avert my eyes from her. This was my moment of revenge, emotionless and sharp. The heavy, sticky scent of Taya's perfume wafted into my nose. I picked up the Clarity Essence I'd prepared myself from a small serving tray beside me. The clear, amber-colored liquid in the bottle shimmered in the light. Clarity, I whispered. This is the theme of tonight's party, Taya, and it's all we need. I dropped a drop of clarity into a small glass. The glass gleamed for everyone in the room to see. Please smell it, I said, my voice filled with Vivian Sterling's lab tone. This is the scent of Alaska's honesty and truth. Taya smelled it. Her face instantly contorted. Unlike me, she wasn't sedated. The sharp, bitter, toilet cleaner-smelling base of the chemical poison stung her nose. What is this? Taya snarled. It smells awful, like burnt rubber. You're wrong, I corrected. This is the smell of betrayal. The base note is the industrial solvent Logan used to sell Loca, and the top note is the residue of the sedative Logan used to cause my cognitive decline. Richard and Kevin approached us, having overheard our conversation. Taya's face flushed. Logan's plan had been exposed in front of everyone. Kevin turned to me. Kiska, I thought Logan was just having relationship problems. This is a conspiracy. Yes, it was, I said, with the cold clarity of triumph. And this party was a show I put on to prove I wasn't unstable, hysterical. I'm not Logan's shattered fiancé. I'm a bullet survivor, and I'm celebrating my freedom. Richard and Taya stumbled towards the door, seeing the scenario Logan had concocted for them crumble. Like the revelations of Candace and Marcus, Logan's web had crumbled. The party didn't end with Logan's exit, or rather, Taya and Richard's escape. Instead, the atmosphere changed. Just like at Vesper's party, there was a collective sense of relief and catharsis in the air. People were digesting the truth that had replaced the whispers. The following weeks were tumultuous. Logan's lawyers objected, claiming I had harmed the lodge by embezzling its assets. But the recordings, the sedative residue, and the evidence of the shady deal with North Star Holdings refuted these claims. Logan's lawyers made one last attempt to prove I was mentally unstable, but my lawyer, Sarah, foiled this move. If Kiska Sterling is as unstable as Logan claims, then the signatures she put to save the lodge are legally invalid. This means that the lodge's shares are now entirely under her husband's control. So, Mr. Logan, would you rather have a company controlled by a crazy woman, or a company controlled by a man awaiting prison? Logan fell into his own trap. To admit that I was sane would have been to admit that he had been trapped by me and that the lodge's coffers had been emptied. To admit that I was insane would have meant losing the North Star deal forever. After months of legal proceedings, Logan Sterling was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for using toxic sedatives on his wife and attempting to embezzle the lodge's assets. I did not attend the sentencing hearing. I sent my lawyer. They told me he cried and begged for forgiveness, but I knew those tears were from personal pain. Taya filed for divorce immediately after Logan, and she too was pushed out of the wealthy social circle Logan had introduced himself to. This scandal made national headlines, and the corporate poisoners case became a case study in law schools. North Star Holdings shares plummeted overnight, and Thorne was forced to resign. Kay, Legacy, and Clarity Thorpe had saved Loka. My name was no longer associated with a story of betrayal, but with a symbol of resilience and comeback. Just like in Vivian's story, instead of turning away from me, people who heard my story flocked to Loka's products for my honesty and strength. But there was a price to pay for victory. I was left alone in the room. The pain of losing my son, even though I didn't consider Logan my son, it was his loss, sat like a shriveled, cold stone in my heart. But I knew how to cope with it now. I would turn the pain into an art. One day, Nanook came to me while I was working in Loka's warehouse. Nanook had become the conscience of the lodge, the one who found the recording device Logan had been listening to. "Kiska," she said, gesturing with her hand towards my grandmother's old scent test books kept in the lodge's safe. "Logan is inside. The lodge needs an heir. To whom will you pass it on?" Logan had betrayed the lodge's spirit, despite their blood ties. Just as Vivian had chosen young Sierra, I had made my decision. "Nanook," I said, a warm smile on my face, "the lodge's spirit is not passed on by blood or paper. The spirit is passed on by conscience." I looked at Nanook. In her eyes was the honesty and eagerness to learn that I had seen in Sierra, the waitress in Utah. "You will be my new apprentice," I said. "I will teach you the tribal knowledge my grandmother bequeathed to you, and my knowledge of the lodge's supply chain and purification science. Together, we will rebuild this legacy." Nanook's eyes lit up. "Blood is just a biological fluid, Nanook," I said, echoing Vivian's words. "Sometimes it can be rotten. Legacy lives in the soul." 6 months later, after Logan's arrest and Loka's liberation, Nanook and I were working on a new fragrance in the lab. This would be the scent that distilled all this process of pain and triumph. My confession. This fragrance was clarity. I had blended the bitter wormwood of loneliness and the sharp pepper of betrayal into it. But at its base, I had used vetiver and oak moss roots, representing the sturdy, unbreakable roots that keep the tree standing even in the storm. On the table, lay a copy of that thick, crumpled, and burnt power of attorney that Logan had forced me to sign. When I burned the paper, Logan's ambition and betrayal mingled with the air of Loka's lab. I picked up the bottle of clarity. It was a simple shape, without a label. I offered it to Nanook. "What does this smell like?" I asked. Nanook sniffed, her eyes wide. "Like drinking cold water on a hot day. Sharp, but necessary." "Exactly," I smiled. "The truth is always a little bitter, but it heals." I lost Logan as my husband, but I gained faith in myself and my freedom. I took back control of Loka, and just as Vesper started her own events company, I started a new era for Loka with Nanook. There was no more fear, only an honest path stretching before me. Smelling of ozone and bitter almonds, this is the end of the story, friends. Kiska Sterling emerged victorious from the hell created by her own son. But that victory came at a price. Let's be honest, what would you do? If you were in Kiska's place, would you push Logan to face such a severe punishment, knowing it would ruin his life forever in order to protect your own life and your grandmother's legacy? Or would a mother's wife's compassion prevail? And would you try to hide everything, forgive, and give him a second chance? Write in the comments. I'm curious about your opinion. Some might find Kiska ruthless, saying a mother should forgive. Others might think evil should be punished regardless of kinship. Whose side are you on? And one more question. Could Nanook, a simple cook, be a worthy heir to my grandmother's lodge and my perfume house? Or is talent only passed down through blood? If you enjoyed my story, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the video with your friends. Your support empowers us to create new stories. On screen, you can see 2 new life stories that we highly recommend. See you in the next life story.